When the war in Vietnam is mentioned, the first thing that comes to most people's minds is the thud of Huey helicopter blades cutting through the humid air, echoing over dense jungles and small hamlets. Indeed, the sleek design of the Huey helicopter made it an unmistakable icon of the Vietnam War. Yet its significance surpassed its iconic look, as helicopters played a pivotal role in combat for the first time in human history. In Vietnam, helicopters marked the dawn of a new tactical approach, tactical air mobility, and fundamentally transformed military strategy. It was actually during the Korean War that helicopters first emerged as a transformative asset in American military strategy. They were extensively employed during the conflict for medical evacuations, transportation, and logistics support. The U.S. Army notably capitalized on these aerial vehicles, dispatching 3 medical detachments equipped with H-13 helicopters in 1951. These helicopters efficiently evacuated over 221,000 wounded soldiers to mobile Army surgical hospitals, introducing a groundbreaking dimension, preserving lives in combat. The Marine Corps, pioneers in post-World War II helicopter tactics, went further by establishing helicopter transport squadrons for tactical transport, reconnaissance, and support. The innovative vertical envelopment concept gained traction during this period, solidifying helicopter strategic significance. Despite limited attention, the Army's extensive use of helicopters for medical evacuations, coupled with the Marine Corps' innovative tactical applications, laid a crucial foundation for their future integral role in military endeavors. In the aftermath of the Korean War, the landscape of military strategy was poised for transformation. General James Gavin's endorsement of reintroducing a potent cavalry element paved the way for future helicopter warfare enthusiasts. The concept of armed combat cavalry vehicles found an advocate in Brigadier General Carl I. Hutton, who, in 1955, sought fresh perspectives on aviation needs. Hutton's inquiry contemplated the organizational structure for aircraft that could encompass diverse tactical roles, such as rapid reconnaissance, swift strikes, firepower delivery, and heavy combat. Helicopters, with their adaptability, emerged as fitting candidates for the revolutionary approach here. Colonel J.D. Vanderpool, driven by Hutton's vision, undertook crucial tests in 1956 on a Bell H-13 Sioux helicopter, armed with .50 caliber machine guns and Oerlikon 8cm fixed-fin aerial rockets. The test confirmed the ability of helicopters to wield weaponry while airborne without affecting their structural integrity. Taking the concept beyond theory, Vanderpool's team showcased helicopters' versatile utility, ranging from scouting to artillery delivery. The team recognized that helicopter mobility transcended conventional road-bound thinking. Terrain features could be harnessed strategically, profoundly altering the dynamics of engagement. In 1957, new experiments were conducted with various weaponry configurations on multiple helicopters. It was in this hub of innovation that tactical air mobility began to flourish. Pioneers like Vanderpool redefined warfare's possibilities, ushering in an era where helicopters ceased to be mere machines of transport. The final transition from conventional warfare doctrines was spurred by political shifts, as the doctrine of massive retaliation receded under President John F. Kennedy. His Secretary of Defense, Robert S. McNamara, recognized the need for agile responses to brushfire wars, prompting a reevaluation of Army aviation. In 1962, McNamara directed the establishment of a special board for this task that was chaired by General Hamilton H. Howze. The board swiftly embarked on a comprehensive series of tests and studies at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, with the premise that helicopters, with their unprecedented mobility, could revolutionize ground warfare. The concept of air mobility took shape, envisioning troops swiftly transported to battlegrounds for rapid and effective engagement. The Howze Board's recommendations were clear: 5 air assault divisions, each equipped with 459 aircraft, predominantly helicopters, would replace traditional divisions. These divisions could mount assaults, deploy firepower, and provide close air support with remarkable efficiency. Additionally, the board envisioned air cavalry combat brigades with enhanced mobility, capable of swift and decisive action. In January of 1962, Operation Chopper took place in Vietnam. It was the first U.S. engagement in a significant battle in the Vietnam War, and the first tactical operation involving combat troop airlifts. The operation solidified the inevitability of introducing air mobility as a new military doctrine. However, instead of fully embracing the board's recommendations, which would have necessitated a radical overhaul of the Army's structure, the Army leadership opted for more extensive tests starting in 1963. The trials would revolve around scenarios based on a division and its parts, essentially removing the air cavalry combat and air transport brigades from the equation. For the purposes of the exercises, the 11th Air Assault Division was activated in February of 1963 at Fort Benning, Georgia. It comprised only one infantry battalion supported by an aviation battalion, the 227th Assault Helicopter Battalion. By the summer of 1964, the division had evolved, encompassing 6 infantry battalions organized into 3 brigades, aviation and artillery battalions, and artillery elements. The practical constraints of Fort Benning led to extensive trials being moved to the expanse of Georgia, North Carolina, and South Carolina, affirming the division's audacious ambitions. In a massive exercise known as Air Assault II, the division undertook a rigorous trial amidst the rugged terrains of North and South Carolina. The challenge was immense. 35,000 soldiers maneuvered across 4 million acres, pitting the 11th Air Assault Division against the 82nd Airborne Division. Hurricane Isabel's wrath introduced further complexity to the exercise, with rain and high winds testing the guts of 120 helicopter pilots. Despite the storm, helicopters transported combat infantrymen, arriving at their destination an hour ahead of conventional methods. The exercise illuminated the profound advantages of the air mobility doctrine. Heli-borne units exhibited striking speed, discharging sky troopers across compass points, swiftly overcoming obstacles by flying over them. In scenarios against conventional attacks, helicopters provided an agile escape, confounding the 82nd Airborne Division and enabling aggressive counterattacks from unforeseen angles. As the trials concluded, the 82nd Airborne Division found itself in disarray, the outcome of the exercise evident. Even though the Army officials concluded the traffic had many drawbacks in fighting full-scale armies, they found it very efficient for low-level conflicts and fighting against insurgents. It was precisely what the U.S. forces needed at the moment when the conflict in Vietnam was evolving. In July of 1965, the experimental 11th Air Assault Division was transformed into the 1st Cavalry Division. Only a month later, the unit was sent to Vietnam. The opportunity for the first test of the 1st Air Cav and the new American way of war came during the Battle of Adheres in November of 1965, the first major battle of the American phase of the Vietnam War. Lieutenant Colonel Harold Moore's 1st Battalion of the 7th Cavalry was transported via airlift to a small clearing near Adheres. North Vietnamese General Giap detected the insertion and swiftly instructed 2 of his regiments, the 66th and the 33rd, to encircle and eliminate the American forces. As Lieutenant Colonel Moore dispatched one of his companies to a support position, it accidentally stumbled upon the NVA troops. This encounter led to a fierce 2-day battle. Forewarned, the 1st Battalion valiantly repelled numerous human wave assaults, inflicting significant casualties on the attacking regiments. As the surviving NVA soldiers tried to retreat towards the border, 5 South Vietnamese battalions were swiftly airlifted to obstruct their escape paths. Entrapped, the unsuspecting NVA encountered devastation through a combination of American artillery and South Vietnamese infantry fire. An astonishing feat, artillery batteries shifted positions 67 times and still managed to unleash a staggering 33,108 rounds. The NVA's ambitious endeavor of splitting South Vietnamese troops in half crumbled as a single air mobile battalion left them decimated. The Battle of Ia Drong showcased the success of air mobility. It was evident that this new tactic had turned the tide. The exceptional performance of the 1st American battalions that confronted the NVA uplifted the spirits of the United States political and military leaders. Throughout the war, the 1st Cavalry consistently employed the same air assault tactics across multiple instances. This approach centered on deploying several Bell UH-1 Iroquois support helicopters, swiftly transporting sizable troops to strategically designated points previously marked by reconnaissance helicopters. In accompaniment, 5 to 7 armed Hueys would fly in formation on both flanks. These gunships were equipped with an arsenal comprising 7.62mm machine guns, a 2.75-inch rocket launchers, miniguns, or 40mm grenade launchers. Such formidable firepower effectively shielded ground troops while they were disembarking from the transport helicopters. Notably, the formation typically incorporated at least one medevac Huey to be on standby for potential casualties. In the war's later stages, the armed Hueys were succeeded by AH-1 Cobras. Upon reaching the designated landing zone, transport helicopters had to decelerate and land, remaining stationary while the troops disembarked. Given their vulnerability in this stance, gunships executed steep aerial maneuvers over the landing zone, effectively neutralizing potential threats on the ground. Following troop disembarkation, helicopters swiftly departed to minimize exposure. The The Vietnam War provided a fertile ground for helicopter deployment in both tactical and non-tactical scenarios, due to the country's lacking road systems and diverse terrain. American combat units quickly realized the advantages of helicopters, employing them in various roles such as air mobile insertions, rescue missions, close air support, reconnaissance, and medical evacuations. Around 390,000 wounded soldiers were saved by medical evacuation helicopters, a far more considerable achievement than during the Korean War, because in Vietnam, medevac was more challenging due to contested landing zones. Helicopters also played a vital role in logistics by ferrying artillery and supplies. Ultimately, the 1st Air Cavalry became the Army's 1st Division size unit to spend over 2,000 days in South Vietnam, thus making it the longest-serving Army unit in country during the war. It received numerous citations and awards for combat. The air mobility tactic was not without its drawbacks, however. Critiques argue that air assaults reduced ground movement against their enemy. Experience at Ia Drong, indeed, highlighted troops' resilience on landing zones, sacrificing mobility once dismounted, ceding the initiative to the enemy. Concerns about the helicopter's tendency to alert the enemy were also raised, as well as its insufficient armament and vulnerability, questioning the ability to defend disputed landings. Gradual adaptation by the NVA and Viet Cong's units to new American tactics only emphasized these air mobility limitations. The challenges of employing air mobility, underscored by its vulnerabilities, showed that while it brought flexibility, it also necessitated adaptability and careful planning to avoid predictability and loss of control over operations. The efficiency of air mobility and helicopters in combat was further questioned after the war was over. Some even suggested that the doctrine contributed to the American defeat in the war, as the military became too dependent on air mobility after it showed initial success. Nevertheless, one thing is for sure: since the inception of mechanized forces and the tank in World War I, no other advancement has wielded such transformative influence on combat strategy as helicopters and the doctrine of tactical air mobility. Thank you for watching this episode. If you liked it, please make sure to share it and give us a thumbs up. Also, let us know your thoughts on America's air cavalry strategy during the Vietnam War in the comment section down below. Don't forget to subscribe to our Militology channel for more content. There's more to come, so stay tuned.